Hi, people. Just want to say a few words on this scandal engulfing New York State with the announced resignation of Andrew Cuomo. I think it doesn't become formal for a few days yet, but basically, Cuomo has announced his resignation today. Just big political news from the States. Cuomo is one of the most prominent Democratic politicians. He's been governor of New York State since 2011, and from what I gather, until his scandal, for the most part, he was quite highly regarded governor. He was praised for his handling of COVID, and from what I gather, he was generally seen as a strong governor. So it's obviously a big political development. His lieutenant governor, Kathy Hochul, if I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly, becomes the first female governor of New York, and I think she's the 56th. Whether that's going to be an interim basis or whether she will now be full-time governor, I don't know. But this comes amid allegations of sexual misconduct, and it almost seems like I don't want to say cliche, that's the wrong word, but it almost seems like it's no longer surprising in American politics or American public life to have a powerful man accused of this, because there's just been so many over the last 3 or 4 years in showbiz and politics. Um, and there are a number of talking points around this. Firstly, it's not the first time that a New York governor has been involved in scandal. The last governor but one, Elliot Spitzer, of course, had to step down in 2008 after admitting visiting sex workers. A little bit different, but nevertheless a scandal. Um, I think with Como, one of the problems here is he always kind of came across as an upright guy. He never came across, at least publicly, from my perspective, as sleazy or I mean, not that there's any way to really tell what goes on behind closed doors, but it's interesting the wording that he used in his resignation speech because on one hand, he's denied the allegations. On the other hand, he's acknowledged that these multiple women, I believe it's 11 women, um, were clearly unhappy with his behaviour. And the way he put it was that he never crossed a line, but the line has been redrawn, and that's no excuse for him making these women uncomfortable. Although the overtone of his statement was that that wasn't his intention. Now, his lawyer, female lawyer, has hit back against the prosecution's report, saying that all the details and evidence needs to be heard. And this gets into the tricky area of high-profile allegations, due process, and it very much ties into the Me Too thing, because that's not over. I think the implications of Me Too are still around. For the women who have made the accusations, they feel vindicated. I was thinking about something though. For a high profile man who's accused of this, particularly a politician, he can have his say. He's made the speech, and he can word that speech whatever way he wants. I mean, you could argue he has to be careful because, he's ostensibly going to be facing a trial now, but nevertheless, he can make the speech. An ordinary man accused of this wouldn't be able to do that. So, in a sense, there's, I don't want to say privilege, but there's a kind of flexibility or a platform the powerful men can have that ordinary guys can't, who are accused of this. Now, I don't want to be misunderstood. I personally feel that when there are multiple allegations, there probably is something to it. I think the plausibility that you have multiple women just lying or trying to smear an innocent man is just that. It's implausible. Because it would require a very orchestrated conspiracy. Now, the interesting thing is, Como has denied the allegations of sexual assault, but he hasn't outright denied that he made these women uncomfortable. He obviously knows what's being referred to, because he hasn't said, I don't have any clue what this is about. I've never met these women before or anything like that. So he's not sort of implying that he's totally oblivious to what they're talking about, but he's rather implying that he has a different interpretation of what his intentions were. Um, as I understand it, some of this happened in Albany, which of course is the state capital. So I don't know if these women were interns or workers or employees of the state government or what, but I think there must be something to it. Como sounded uncomfortable, emotional when he was making this resignation speech. 10 years is a long time in politics. His father, of course, Mario Como, had been governor in the 70s. I think it was the 70s. So, you know, and his brother works at CNN. The Comos are a prominent family. But what is the message from this? Well, I guess it depends on what happens in his trial. I assume there will be a trial. Um, if he actually committed sexual assault, I hope he absolutely faces justice because I do think it would be wrong, to just dismiss this idea that there are powerful men who use the power to abuse that position. Um, However, one thing I dislike about Me Too is some of the kind of go-to arguments, and you see this on CNN a lot. This kind of attitude, believe all women. I think it's very dangerous because it totally disregards due process. Because by implication, if you're saying believe all women, then by definition, all men must be guilty, all men who are accused. And then why bother with courts? Why not just have street justice or something? So the attitude believe all women that came out of Me Too is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Rather, I think the attitude should be when a woman makes an allegation, should be treated with sensitivity, respectfully, but ultimately what matters is the evidence and the information. For example, if you had two different accusers who didn't know each other and they were making the same sort of claims, then that would be a strong indication that there is something there. But if you had an accuser and she kept changing her testimony or things didn't add up, then there would be question marks. But I do think that the other side of that is that there probably have been situations where women have not felt confident to come forward because they wouldn't be believed because of the kind of stigma of false accusations. And I think that's something we need to be careful with. False accusations happen, but it doesn't mean that it's like a 50-50 situation. I don't think it is. And a woman who's been made to feel uncomfortable and degraded in that way deserves justice. There's a lot of angles to look at with this, but I guess time will tell. The president has welcomed his resignation, as has his successor. I guess now, I imagine there will be a trial. So it's certainly the biggest. I mean, with America, it's been so politically unstable of late that I was going to say this is the biggest political scandal for a while, but it's not that long, I guess, since the Trump impeachment, second impeachment, and the inquiry into the storming of the state capitol has been a very, very turbulent few years in American politics. But I just think, if you look at Cuomo's resignation speech, there's a few things that don't quite make sense. Like, he's denying the accusations, yet he's also talking as if he does know what they're referring to. So he must have known what happened. He must have known what they're referring to because he hasn't said, I don't have a clue what these women are talking about. But that's another side of it, though, that I don't like. I don't like this idea that a man who is accused, and this isn't so much about Como, it's just a more a general observation, can't sort of say, I'm totally innocent, these are false accusations, if he believed that to be the case. Because this mantra of believe all women, put it this way, if you had an innocent man who was accused, and I'm absolutely not saying that's the case here, I'm just making it as a talking point. If you had an innocent man who was accused, and he believed the women who were accusing him, or the woman who is accusing him, is lying, maybe as part of a wider plot or something, feminists would be that, oh, we can't call her a liar. Well, why not? Why not? I think, I mean, in Britain, we have this issue whereby men who are accused of rape are named, but accusers are not. I think that's fundamentally unfair. I understand the argument for it, which is if you have a serial predator or offender, then it gives other victims the confidence to come forward. But I'm not sure if that's enough of a reason to have that. I think you either should make everyone anonymous or name everyone. Um, but getting back to Kumo, like I say, some things don't quite make sense about his statement. If he is guilty, I have no sympathy with him, none, because I've personally witnessed sexual harassment um, of women, and there are some guys out there who are incredibly entitled. They have a mindset where, yeah, it's just a sort of entitled mindset, and they don't stop to consider how sleazy or uncomfortable it might be making the woman feel. So that is the other side of it. And I'm not at all saying this is a 50-50 thing, but we don't know. My gut feeling is when you have multiple accusations, it's very, very difficult to dismiss that as a conspiracy. And I just think it's interesting that Como hasn't denied that he made these women uncomfortable. He's denied the accusations, but he's talking about a line and so on. No, that's different than saying I'm totally innocent. I don't know what they're talking about. That's interesting. He also apologized to his daughters. Could this be a case that Kumo, what age is he? Early 60s? Could it be that his generation, maybe he was a little bit of inappropriate uncle type character? He went a little bit too far on compliments or something. I don't know. The nature of that would need to be disclosed at the trial in order to determine whether it classes as sexual harassment or not. But obviously, I mean, common sense dictates if a woman's clearly uncomfortable, if anyone's clearly uncomfortable, then you stop. Just stop flat out. Andrew Cuomo's an intelligent man. It's hard to believe he wouldn't have known that they were uncomfortable. So I don't know. That's my thoughts on it. If you're a New Yorker, let me know your thoughts. Do you think it's right that he resigned? Um, do you think that this is connected to Me Too, or it's sort of isolated from that whole thing? I think it is connected because that isn't over. But I just think that some of the rhetoric that Cuomo's using is interesting, raises a few questions, and B, if he's guilty, he has to, he shouldn't escape justice just because he's a former governor. And C, even if Cuomo is guilty, that will not prove that all women are telling the truth. It will not prove the mantra believe all women. It just won't, because there has to be due process. In fact, due process is just as much in favour of victims, because if you don't have due process, and let's just say an innocent man was implicated, what does that mean? It means that the guilty man was then free. So that's why due process and truth and transparency is so, so important. So we'll see what happens.